Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel map for December 2021. As usual, we'll begin with a recap, but I want to say that this is probably one of the most exciting channel maps that I can record in recent history, and I'll tell you why. So in the month of November, we worked on Onitar, which is a new title that Vik and I have come up with as far as like game concepts and technical planning goes. And it's essentially a weird cross between a MOBA and an RTS, where you have an RTS AI ally, even in competitive play, and they're the ones who control all the minion spawns and stuff, and you are controlling just one unit, or multiple units if you have summons and stuff. And it's almost like if you took Diablo-style mechanics, and maybe even character designs, and obviously inventory systems, and assigned them to a MOBA environment, and then had an RTS player being the one who is handling the armies instead of it just being like automated lanes and stuff. That's like probably the most succinct description I can currently come up with. It's obviously a bit of a complicated, like high concept game as a result of that, but it's still far less complex and in terms of scale, especially as well as things that we need to handle engine side than something like Cosmonarchy. So this in many respects will be a nice little beta test for us, a nice little like stepping stone towards larger projects. And it'll probably take maybe 9 months to a year to make. And so that's a lot more reasonable than, maybe the 2 years it might have taken to do Cosmonarchy in our current form. I think with all of the things that we have to do engine-wise, like literally everything that we're working on, besides maybe some of the more in-the-weeds inventory stuff for Onitar, is something that Cosmonarchy needs anyway. Like Cosmonarchy needs functional multiplayer, obviously, like networking and stuff. Cosmonarchy needs a lot of UI things and the RTS stuff and all of the mechanics therein and the control scheme and whatnot. And a lot of that is going to indeed be in place for something like Onitar. So I'm very excited to see where that goes and what happens with regards to the progress we make in the engine itself. But things are going very well. So that's one of the reasons why December is exciting and why this channel map is exciting, is I get to tell you that we indeed have been making pretty consistent progress on the engine side of things. And even though I'm swamped with work inside and outside of this house, I still have been pretty productive, I would say, overall. So I'm quite happy about that. Now, we also have some channel progress for the No Frauds Club YouTube channel. And the biggest thing here, the bombshell, so to speak, that might end up catapulting us into some sort of stardom, I'm not actually sure about that one, but we'll see, is an interview with none other than Jonathan Blow, the creator of Braid and the Witness. He agreed to sit down with me for 2 hours, and we talked about all sorts of different things. And while on the one hand, if we had maybe 30 more minutes, I could have like wrapped up the conversation in a neater bow. In some ways, it's actually good that it left me wanting more, and hopefully it does for the audience too. And hopefully, even Jonathan Blow himself was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting conversation, and we can get back together in a couple months or whatever and talk a little bit more about, like, I would like to ask him some more pointed questions about his games specifically after I've played them. More on that later on. And in general, you can check that out. That should be live any moment now by the time you're watching this video. So link in the description, of course. Now, the other thing that we've been able to do is make progress on some more mundane things. So that would be the birthday map progress that I've been doing. There's going to be 2 releases of one for the future, which is the birthday campaign set in Brood War using the Cosmonarchy Brood War game state. That is going to happen. There's going to be 2 of those in December, so you can stay tuned for those if you've been following those around, and maybe you yourself watching are the birthday present recipient. Pretty unlikely, but 1 in 100 chance or whatever, so whatever. And of course, the Command & Conquer 3 playthrough has been progressed, and now there are only 2 streams left as of the recording of this video, which is happening on the 5th of December for records. So I'm pretty excited to finally put that game down, just because it means I get to pick up another game. And the plan, as I get into in the first channel section, is, we're looking pretty good as far as that thing is concerned. So I'll talk a little bit about my plans for Let's Plays a bit later. Now, on the production side of things, in the month of December, obviously, the major focus for us, the No Frauds Club, is to work on Onitar and Antikythera. Get the engine up to snuff, get Onitar in a position where conceptually it can actually be executed upon, and then we can start to, basically take these things that we've drawn on paper and then sort of like an actual real-life architect, like start building them, with all of the raw materials and see if they hold up, right? So we're going to see what happens there. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, the birthday campaign releases are some other things that I'll be working on as far as like content goes, and those will have a much quicker release time. But there will be a demo available for Onitar late January. So if you're really interested in that concept, or you just want to see what we've been getting up to, you won't have to wait much longer for something to actually play. And hopefully this will even include like workable multiplayer support. Currently, the biggest limiting factor that we have is ping. We don't really have good ping compensation in the netcode. So if you were trying to connect to somebody in Poland and you're in where I live, in my house for some reason, and you're not me, then that would be a real weird situation to be in. But also that would kind of work against you as far as like making sure that the game doesn't lag and stuff, so, or stutter or whatever. So we kind of still have the same problem that Brood War has when there's like a lot of connections, but perhaps a little bit worse than Brood War currently because we haven't done all of the compensation devices as far as like the doing essentially prediction for things like cameras and whatnot. So we've done some of those things, Vika's done some of those things, but there's still a ways to go before it's fixed in that sense. And even if it were fixed, I mean, there's only so many things you can do to fix it, so we might just have to look into a completely different implementation of networking, which is fine. It's just one of the growing pains of figuring out netcode in your own engine. So, on the content side for videos, the first channel plans obviously still include those scattered dev streams where Veek will do some Antikythera development, or I'll do some Onitar item conceptuals, or whatever. Maybe I'll just stream some of the Blender stuff, or maybe I'll stream some of the work that I'm doing, doing manual data entry, which is not very compelling to watch, but might still serve as a public record of work. Who knows? And then there are the continuation of the Let's Plays. So I've been playing Command & Conquer 3, obviously. I would bang that out in maybe a week. And then I'll be playing a retro FPS/adventure game called Hedon, which I don't know that much about, but I'll be playing it anyway. After that, I will play Valve's Portal 2, which is probably the only Valve game that's not a VR game that I haven't played, besides like Artifact or whatever. So that'll be interesting for a couple of reasons. I'll get into that when I get into that. And then afterwards, I do indeed plan on playing Braid and The Witness, which are the games that Jonathan Blow has made, so that I can be equipped for a potential follow-up interview should it happen. And also just so that I can experience something where, you know, somebody who has obviously put a lot of thought and effort into the things that he does, I get to actually experience the product of that. And I feel I've been starved from that, generally speaking. So, you know. We move on from there to other channel plans. I will formally launch the No Frauds Club YouTube channel by the time you're watching this video, probably, but in general, just like very early on, because now I actually have some video content to upload. These will include interviews with creators, which obviously the first of which is Jonathan Blow, and then introductions to the Frauds Club standards. So this will be like shorter, bite-sized videos, maybe like between 5 and 10 minutes long. Probably 10 minutes would be a longer video. I don't know that any of them will really get to that point, where they're essentially, you know, it's like a slightly more edited version of me talking into a camera, similar to what you're seeing here, with some clips to support what I'm talking about, where I will be going over certain ideas in video games and how we plan to do things differently. So obviously one of them would be like monetization. So a lot of this stuff is essentially, you've seen like weird drafts of it in the meta page. If you've watched the meta documentation, if you actually read that, where I talk about like the Frauds Club standard for pricing and monetization and stuff. Now, I'm not 100% sure how that will work out as far as like some of the other content, but I would imagine that, you know, I've had plenty of ideas playing games. I could record some, you know, playthroughs of something like, for example, the Halo 4 Spartan Ops, which is an example that stuck out to me when I was playing it. That was very hollow as an experience. That might be an example of something where I take some recordings of that and I talk about how, you know, it's very hollow. It's very, you know, it doesn't feel like it was actually, you know, created by humans. And even you can't even feel like a singular influence because it just feels so by the numbers and cookie cutter. And so it feels very much like a design by committee thing. And so that could be an interesting way to maybe like contrast that with something that doesn't feel that way, assuming I can find something that fits the bill. But maybe there's some other deeper point I can get to. So I'm thinking like, you know, 6 to 7 minute videos on average where I'm deconstructing something and showing why I think it's bad, and hopefully being able to give a counterexample, but even if I can't, at least talking about the theoretical counterexample that would actually provide some sort of signal or blaze a trail down a different road or something like that, right? So you can see why that would be valuable, and also just because it would be an interesting discussion point. It would be presented in a lot more of a formal manner, and I guess you could say respectful manner, although I have a feeling I'll still be using quite damning language. It just won't be perhaps as vitriolic. I'm not sure what terms you'll use to describe it, but you'll know it when you see it. Now, for plans after December, obviously there is that stress test Antikythera demo thing for Onitar, and that is going to be coming to you in end of January, so stay tuned for that. Past the Onitar demo, I would like to return full force into that campaign video I've been working on. And then obviously there's the mapping guide part 3 and also some other content down the line. So stay tuned, for the last chapter of all of these has not yet been spoken. And yeah, I don't know. Something else that's deep and meaningful, yet still leaves you hanging in suspense.